Hello, all of you delightful beings out there, and welcome back to the stream. I am Razim, currently as Ether, the Labramon. And we are doing some more Factorio this evening. Meanwhile, we've got Wicked Whiskers there in the bottom left doing art. Fantastic art, as always. And we're going to have Rygone do some narration here in a moment for us. And we've also got Rex Strider and the Salt Fairy here. They're currently playing Marvel something or other. Rivals?
Marvel Rivals, yep.
That one. But yeah, I'll go ahead and let Rygone begin his narration. I'll be pretty quiet during this time, and we'll let Rygone do the reading.
Sounds good. Hello, everyone. My name is Rygone, and today I'll be doing a book, at least some chapter readings, on a book called The Haunting of Blackwood House by Darcy Coates. Before we begin, I'm going to do some very quick vocal practice just to get the vocal cords warmed up, and then we'll get into the reading itself. So let me go ahead and quickly choose something quick to read. Here we go. We could do the difficult English poem. I'm not going to do all of it because it's a lengthy poem, but I'll do a few lines. Dearest creature in creation, studying English pronunciation, I will teach you in my verse. Sounds like corpse, core, horse, and worse. I will keep you, Susie, busy, make your head with heat grow dizzy. Tear and eye, your dress will tear, so shall I. Oh, hear my prayer. Just compare heart, beard, and herd, dies and diet, lord and word, sword and sward, retain and Britain, mind the latter how it's written. Now I surely will not plague you with such words as plaque and argue, but be careful how you speak. Say break and stake, but bleak and streak. Right? I feel like we've gotten the vocal cords a little bit more warmed up. Again, this is a few chapters of The Haunting of Blackwood House by Darcy Coates. Chapter 1. Seance. You're gifted, my dear. The spirits are clamoring to speak with you. Come. The woman stretched her hands towards Mara. They were contorted by rheumatism, their skin papery and spotted from age. Mara didn't want to touch them, but her mother stood behind her and nudged her forward with one hand. Mara turned her head. He didn't dare speak in anything more than a whisper. I don't want to. The clink of jewelry echoed in the small room as Mara's mother bent to murmur into her ear. Her mother always dressed elaborately for their seances. Strings of pendants from deceased relatives, bangles with skulls and occult words notched into them, and the heavy, powerful perfume she wore on significant occasions. Mara hated the perfume. It permeated whatever room they were in, building up in the atmosphere until it turned her stomach and made her dizzy. Be polite. Mara's mother kept her voice low and soft. Her breath tickled Mara's ear. Miss Horowitz has offered to be your mentor. It's a huge honor. Take her hands. Mara was struggling to breathe. The dimly lit sitting room, with its mess of antique and arcane objects, unsettled her. The small round seance table was draped in an off-white crochet cloth. Single candles sat in its center. Animal skulls, ancient books, jars of dead insects, and a slow, ticking metronome filled the shelves. Complex, ragged ink paintings covered every gap in the walls. The curtains were drawn, but they couldn't muffle the roar of the storm outside. Take her hands, Mara's mother repeated. Her long fingers squeezed Mara's shoulders. It was offered as a comforting gesture, but held a hint of warning. Mara tried to swallow, but her throat was too tight. She raised her hands, and Miss Horowitz noticed their shaking. She didn't show it. The old spirit medium thrust her hands forward like a praying mantis, snatching its victim out of the air, and the fingers pinched Mara's firmly enough to hurt. "Now, my dear, concentrate." Miss Horowitz pulled closer to her so that they both leaned over the round table, and Mara had nowhere to look except the sagging, blotchy face. The candles sent hard shadows dancing through the skin creases and collected gloom around Miss Horowitz's eyes. You've inherited incredible talents. I can feel your power swelling inside of you. To unlock it, all you need to do is focus. I will channel it, and we'll see which spirits answer our call tonight." Thunder shook the window pane. Mara flinched at the noise, and Miss Horowitz's hands tightened, sending sparks of pain through the girl's fingers. The jingle of jewelry was warning of her mother's movements, and Mara glanced towards her out of the corner of her eye. Elaine's face glowed in the candlelight as she watched her daughter. "Try, darling," she whispered. There was a deep, hungry need in her voice. "Miss Horowitz says you could be the most powerful medium of your generation. You just need to realize your gift." Thunder cracked again. Mara couldn't stop shaking as she closed her eyes. Miss Horowitz had said to focus, but she had no idea on what. She didn't want to imagine the spirits her mother said lived around them. She'd seen them enough in her nightmares. Skeletal, neither human nor corpse. They were trapped in a twilight space without reprieve as they watched the mortal realm with angry, cold black eyes. "They're coming," Miss Horowitz crowed. Mara dared to inch her eyelids open. The older woman was swaying, her head rolling so violently that Mara was afraid her neck might have broken. The medium's bloodshot eyes were turned far back in her head, exposing the whites. The storm, already severe, seemed to redouble its efforts. The rain's bellow nearly drowned out Miss Horowitz's gurgling, croaking voice. "Speak with us, living ones. What messages do you wish to share with your mortal vessels?" "I don't want to do this. I don't want to do any more." Mara tried to pull away, but couldn't free her hands. She turned towards her mother, but Elaine's eyes were focused completely on the spirit medium. Reverent trust filled every feature of her face. "Come!" Miss Horowitz's voice rose into a wail above the thunder. "Speak!" The table shook, causing the flame to flicker. Mara smothered a scream. She hadn't been aware of crying, but wet tracks tickled her cheeks. "Come!" The shaking intensified. Miss Horowitz's mouth gaped wide to expose heavily worn and irregular teeth in gums that had receded nearly to their roots. She threw her head back and forth, her floating gray hair coming free from its knot to hang about her face in oily strands. A string of saliva dripped over her jaw. Then, Miss Horowitz snapped forward, as though an invisible being had hit the back of her head. She gasped, her eyelids fluttered, and her hands trembled. Then she said, in a voice deep and guttural and wholly not her own, "Beware the home that craves you, child. Your gift and your curse are the same. Beware the home that craves." The last words were expelled as a bellow that matched the thunder's crashing volume. Mara's heart fluttered. Terror had frozen her. She couldn't draw breath. As Miss Horowitz's eyes rolled down to fix on Mara, fear and shock and oxygen deprivation swarmed together to grant her reprieve from the seance. She passed out. That is the end of Chapter 1.
Oh, that was fast.
Yeah, like I said, there's like 40 chapters to these things. They're gonna go pretty quick.
I'm glad I was muted. I literally killed the entire team with an ult, and yeah.
What? That's awesome, Rex.
There was no containing the pop off.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
It was
Congrats.
amazing. Thank y'all. Doesn't seem like I'm gonna be doing too much with Spider-Man this game, though.
Looks like the second chapter is a little bit lengthier. Just let me know when everyone's ready.
I'm ready.
All right, back to muting.
Okay. Quick little drink. Chapter 2. Changed plans. Ugh. Mara dug her thumbs into the bridge of her nose. The dream was hanging around her like a bad odor. Worse, her neighbor's television was set far too loud. Its tacky laugh track felt as though it was boring into her brain. This is a good day, remember? Gonna get your own house today. Probably. Maybe. You'll be out of this dump by the end of the month. It's good. We're good. A child somewhere farther in the apartment complex shrieked, and Mara had to fight the impulse to beat her forehead against the window. Instead, she slumped into the plastic chair. She didn't own much furniture, and most of it, the chairs, the folding table, and the mattress, were arranged in front of the window. The little square of natural light was her relief from the stark gray plaster walls and threadbare carpet. It also gave her a good view of the avenue's entrance. Neil wasn't due for another 10 minutes, but she fervently hoped he would be early. Now that she was so close to escaping the tacky downtown apartment, she couldn't bear to spend another hour inside it. You're gifted, my dear. Get a grip, Mara growled. She chewed at her thumb as she watched a crumpled newspaper sheet blow through the alley. It's been 4 years since you moved out. You're in control now. Don't waste another minute thinking about the crazy bat. A glitter of silver caught her eye, and Mara exhaled as Neil's large car cruised towards her apartment. She snatched her jacket off the back of the chair, stuffed her keys into his pocket, and left her room at a brisk jog. She had to kick the door on the way out to make it lock properly, and one of her neighbors yelled, "Oi! Keep it down out there!" Mara took the stairs 2 at a time, passing the room with the wailing child and the seemingly incessant rumble of laundry machine. The apartment's door's hinges squealed as Mara pushed into the sunlight. The weather forecasts had been predicting a sudden slide into a drizzly cold autumn, but the day was warm and clear enough to still be deep summer. Neil's car idled in the street. In sharp contrast to the grimy stacks of budget apartments, the car was large, clean, and obviously cared for. Neil leaned across the seat to pop open the passenger door for Mara. He looked unashamedly delighted to see her, and Mara's insides gave a little flip. Suddenly, that morning's dream didn't seem so important. "Good morning." He pressed a warm kiss to her cheek as she settled into the passenger seat. "How'd you sleep?" "Horribly. Can't complain. You?" "Great, thanks." Neil waited for Mara to buckle herself in before putting the car in gear and pulling away from the curb. He navigated them out of the narrow lane, and then reached behind a seat to pull out 2 paper bags and a thermos. I'm guessing you skipped breakfast. The scent of something hot and good filled Mara's nose, and she grabbed the bags and shook them open. Sweet mercy. This is the sole reason I'm dating you, you know. Neil laughed. There's hot chips in that one, and a salad in the other. I thought you might eat some healthy food if I bribed you with something bad. Fool's hope, Mara said through a mouthful of chips. Well, thanks anyway. Goodness, you got ginger biscuits? I figured you'd like that. You're a saint. Mara snuck a glance at Neil as she ate. Approximately the size of an ox and twice as gentle as a kitten, she needed the oversized people mover just to sit comfortably. His fresh pressed shirt sat well on his broad shoulders, and she thought he might have actually bothered trying to comb his sandy brown hair that morning, though it seemed incapable of holding any sort of style. He was trying to smother his grin, and a tint of color around his ears told Mara he was enjoying her reaction to the food. The car's speedometer hovered a fraction below the legal limit as Neil wove out of the downtown streets and into the wider, prettier suburbs with practiced ease. The house they were reviewing was near the outskirts of town. It had been put on the market just the day before and ticked all of Mara's boxes. It was affordable, not a complete dump, and in a good neighborhood. Mara was prepared to buy it that same day if the real building looked as good as the photos. Neil was coming with her as moral support, and to give his opinion on the building. As a carpenter, and had offered to keep an eye out for symptoms of termites or shoddy building. She sometimes wondered how she'd ended up with Neil. In Mara's eyes, he was nearly, not quite, but nearly, perfect. But Neil was religious, and the concept of religion grated against every fiber of Mara's being. They were mirrors of each other in many ways. They'd both been raised in spiritually focused homes, but Neil had embraced his family's beliefs as he'd become an adult, whereas Mara had left home the day she'd turned 18. I suppose our situations aren't quite identical. He never had to sit through all-day seances or listen to a drugged-up medium tell his mother she was a Cleopatra reincarnated. What's up? Neil had pulled up to a set of lights and was watching Mara out of the corner of his eye. She realized she'd been frowning and cleared her face. Nothing. I'm good. Neil smiled at her, but he let the silence stretch. Mara sighed and leaned back in the chair. I had the dream about the seance again. Damn. Neil's hand found hers and squeezed. Mara felt a flutter of pleasure at the sensation of the large fingers wrapped around hers. Neil was steady, was safe. He respected her and her beliefs. That was more than she could have hoped for in a partner. It's fine. She squeezed back as Neil rubbed his thumb over the back of her knuckles. I'm over it. Today's gonna be a good day. This house could be the one. I mean, it probably has a wood lice infestation for the price they're asking, but... Ha! Lights turned green, but Neil let his hand linger on hers for a second before moving it back to the steering wheel. I'll just be glad to see you out of that apartment. Wood lice or no? Mara wrinkled her nose. It's not a bad apartment. Sweetheart, you live next to a meth addict, and the police detained your landlord 3 times in the last month. Yeah, you're right. It's a terrible apartment. Mara leaned against the window to watch the large elms rush past. She didn't want to say it out loud, but she desperately, crushingly hoped that the building they were viewing could be hers. Deadlines were squeezing in all directions, and she needed to find a place to live quickly. She'd been working as a packer in a warehouse, but the company had recently laid off half its staff, Mara amongst them. On the downside, she was jobless. On the upside, when coupled with 4 years of scrupulous saving, her severance package was enough to pay for a small house. That was all Mara had ever wanted. A place to call her own, where she wouldn't be curtailed by an irate landlord's whims, or forced to move if she didn't want to. And the rental agreement for her current apartment was up at the end of that month. If she renewed, she'd be tied to that tiny shabby building for another 3 years. She didn't think she could survive it. Neil had already asked if she'd like to stay in his house, but Mara had shot the idea down before he'd finished speaking. When she left her parents' home, she'd promised herself she would never again sleep in a building tainted by spiritualism, astrology, clairvoyance, religion. And Neil's childhood home stank of religion. Across on one wall, church music mixed into playlists, religious books stacked amongst the thrillers. They were all things Neil barely noticed after living around them his entire life. But they made Mara's skin crawl.
This hamlet shall not fall.
Hey there, Sly. Thank you so much for that raid. Welcome in, everybody. I am Raw Zim. We are currently doing some Factorio here. Meanwhile, we've got Wicked Whiskers there in the bottom left working on art. And we also have Rygone from the channel Rygone Plays doing a very excellent narration for us all this evening. So, I hope your stream went great, Sly, and otherwise, I hope you all settle on in and enjoy.
It's a ghost story.
Yes.
Despite that, Neil and his mother Pam were genuinely nice people. Neil was a relaxed Christian. Mara knew he attended church and had like-minded friends, but his faith didn't saturate his life. The topic hadn't even come up until their third date. Mara had nearly walked out of the restaurant when he told her he was a Christian, but by that point she was too attracted to him for an easy break, so she'd cautiously given him a chance. She was glad she had. He'd sympathized with her feelings about growing up in a spiritualist household, and understood why she didn't ever want to repeat the experience. Neil's phone started blasting a bright pop song. He pulled onto the dirt strip beside the road, and pressed the speaker button on his mobile. Neil here. Oh, good. I caught you. The voice on the other end was breathless. Mara recognized it instantly. Jenny, their real estate agent, seemed to live in a perpetual state of oxygen deprivation. Neil either didn't notice or pretended he didn't, but Mara found it fascinating. She liked to think of their agent as Breathless Jenny. I'm so sorry about this, honey, but the apartment's gone. What? Mara dropped an uneaten chip back into the bag. Well, but it was only listed last night. Oh, hello, Mara. Jenny's apologetic voice took on a note of anxiety. I wish I had better news for you, but it was a really good deal, honey. A couple viewed it this morning and gave us their deposit on the spot. I'm so sorry to disappoint you. It's okay, said. Mara seethed. It is not okay. Neil grabbed a biscuit out of the bag and pressed it into Mara's mouth to silence her. It is okay, Jenny. Do you have any other places we could see today? We're in the car right now. Mara glared daggers at Neil as she chewed through the biscuit. He gave her a contrite smile in response. Well. The sound of rustling paper came through the speaker, and Mara could imagine breathless Jenny's desk, cluttered and chaotic. just as it had been when they'd first met her. I'm sure. No, the Westbrook house is already bought, isn't it? Take your time, said gently. Okay, there's a really nice place in Reddington, but it's a bit outside your budget. Mara swallowed the biscuit. How much? Well, it's nearly double. Nope. Mara was frustrated almost to the point of tears. The loss of the apartment stung. If she didn't find a home within the next few days, she'd be forced to either renew her lease or find a short-term alternative. And both of those options would leach her savings. She snatched the thermos out of the cup holder to give her hand something to do. Neil had made her chamomile tea. She suspected it was the expensive, organic, loose-leaf stuff his mother kept for special occasions. The thought warmed her slightly, but not enough to cut through the disappointment. Neil pressed a hand over the phone to muffle his voice. Mara, I could lend you. I'm not looking for handouts, Mara barked. Neil blinked, then gave a slow nod and removed his hand from the phone. Squeezed her eyes shut. Crap, did I hurt him? Well, Jenny was clearly feeling the pressure. There are empty plots of land or, Goff. And the rustling stopped. The silence stretched out for so long that Mara began to worry the call had been disconnected. There is one place, Jenny said at last. Her voice held a strange, cautious tone. Been a market for ages. It's a little bigger than you were looking for, but under your budget. What's wrong with it? Mara asked automatically. She kept her eyes focused on the thermos lid so that she wouldn't have to see Neil's face. Why'd I have to snap at him? He was only trying to help. I'm gonna be upfront with you, honey. Need a bit of work, and it doesn't have a very nice history. Mara waited impatiently for Jenny to collect herself. Paper Noise was back. At this time, Mara thought their agent might be fanning herself with a stack of loose sheets. Are you familiar with Robert Kant? Neil inhaled sharply. The name was new to Mara. No? Should I be? Yeah. He wasn't a good man, honey. He was a serial killer in the early 1900s, Neil murmured to Mara before turning back to the phone. Jenny, are you saying the house is connected to him? I'm afraid so. He spent the last 4 years of his life living there before he, well, hung himself? Shoot, Neil said. No, hung, Jenny corrected patiently. Mara, intrigued, chewed at her thumb. People could be squeamish about living in a building that had once housed a killer, as if the very walls had somehow been tainted. Her parents, especially, had been big on the concepts of spiritual residues and bad energies. But to Mara, a house was nothing more than a collection of bricks and wood. Simply being in proximity to an unpleasant human should materially reduce the building's worth. And no one else wanted it. Where is it? She asked. Jenny sounded surprised. Well, if it doesn't bother you, it's called Blackwood House, and it's a half-hour drive from town. We could meet there now if you like. Let me give you directions. Mara snuck a glance at Neil as he typed the address into his navigation. His face was placid, but a faint tightness around his lips told her he wasn't entirely happy. She returned her gaze to the thermos. Okay, breathless Jenny said. I'll be there as quick as I can, honey. Have a safe drive now. The call ended, and Neil pulled the car back onto the road. Mara struggled to find the best way to phrase her thoughts, but Neil broke the silence first. I'm sorry we didn't get the house you wanted. I know you're disappointed, and even if this new place isn't a good fit, we'll figure something out. Mara finally raised her eyes. Neil's face held none of the distance or hostility she'd been dreading. Instead, it looked anxious. He kept shooting her glances as he did a three-point turn. She felt her throat tighten and muttered before she lost her courage. I'm sorry I snapped. Being really generous, but... I know. His warm smile was back. He took her hand and laced his fingers through hers. Independence is important to you. I get that. In fact, I kind of like it. Mara leaned over the seat's divider to rest her head against his shoulder. She could feel his muscles shift as he turned the steering wheel, and he smelled like herbs and sawdust. She never would have expected that combination to smell as good as it did on him. Love you. Love you too. Neil took the opportunity to kiss the top of Mara's head. Then he added in a breathless tone, Honey. Mara broke into uncontrollable laughter. Oh my gosh. I swear, if she calls me honey one more time... That is the end of Chapter 2.
Spooky.
How's your game going, Rex?
Pretty good. I popped off several times as Venom, and even the shark tried to grab me and do the thing where he eats me and throws me off the map. I just swung back up, got healed, came back, and started murdering him 5 times in a row for trying to do that. So, yeah. Join Venom.
Good boy.
Sounds like you're doing pretty good.
Yep. Salt's doing awesome, too. They were playing Scarlet that time. Oh, shoot, wait. Let me go back. I need to see what my missions are. I'm starting to get my favorites already. Definitely like Venom. As a tank. He's very evil. Let's see. What?
Oh, I guess Brian headed out. Aw.
He says he'll be back.
Oh, okay. Let me check to see how long the next chapter is. Oh, it's a fairly short chapter.
I'm gonna be
They're
right
all going
back.
to be fairly short. Sure thing.
Okay.
Just let me know when everyone's ready, or we can wait for Salt.
Yeah, let's
How's your
wait
game
for
going,
Salt.
Sam? Sure.
It's going well. Just trying to get iron production back up and running.
Why does the house have a name? 'Cause it's spooky. Everybody knows spooky houses have names. It gives them personality, characteristics, and malevolence. Like a person.
Yeah. My goal is to get to level 30 and I'll be happy. Because I get the cyan version of Venom. It's like they knew.
Oh, you're
Level
almost a
20.
Scion already?
I'm level 20 already, apparently, so I think I can get it if I play one more day. I'm planning to
Heck
play
yeah.
Saturday, so yeah.
Also, holy crap, Whiskers, these are so good.
Uh-huh. So what do we all think of the book so far? I mean, the writing for it seems to be fairly basic.
So far seems to be decent, yeah.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
I mean, it's not like super elucidative, but it gets the point across, and I suppose that's all that matters.
Yeah.
I didn't think Breathless Jenny said honey that much though. Like it completely flew over my head when he's like honey. Ba-da, 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 ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.
You've been ordered to go to sleep? Well, fair enough. Sleep well then, Brian.
Yep, yeah. Have a good rest. It's good so far. Your reading is great though. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it, Sensei. It's good to be able to, practice my narration.
Oh, so the I see the I don't know what you call them. My brain's just turned off. Uh, yep. Gosh, I mean, like he's so not worth me remembering that I forgot their name, and somehow I don't know how because everybody knows who he is. It's just that it's so not even worth remembering because the sea dude, the dude who rules the seas that nobody cares about.
Um, Neptune?
Yeah, they call this dude Namor or something.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, he's just like Troborn. He has a turret, but it's a squid. So I didn't expect him to be Troborn. Troborn.
I'm back.
Welcome
Ew.
back.
I'm thinking about being Namor on this
Welcome
one just
back.
to try him out. Welcome back. How you liking the game, Salt? Because I'm enjoying this. It'll be fun.
I really like it.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Let me know if you want to stop and get a little bit of multiverses in, but I'm probably going to be calling it, like, forcing myself to stop in about 40 minutes, 30 minutes. That way I don't mess my sleep schedule up, because I got to wake up early tomorrow so I can catch an early stream. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm good to keep playing this.
Yeah. Let's see. All right. Go on ahead, Rygone, on the next one whenever ready.
Sounds good. We'll take one more drink of water and we'll keep it going.
Let me look up how I spray. Oh God, no, not this song. Hype, did you enjoy? This song is wild.
Alrighty. Let me go ahead and get background up. Chapter 3. Good house. Language, Neil said gently. Oh, excuse me. Holy crap. Is that better? Chuckled. They parked in what was supposedly Blackwood House's driveway, but Mara was struggling to believe it was real. Her savings would have been enough for a decent-sized apartment, or a one-bedroom house with a tiny yard if she was lucky. But Blackwood House was huge. She counted 10 windows on its 2 floors, plus it seemed to have an attic. It was almost large enough to be a modest hotel. Jenny must have made a mistake. There's no way this is within my budget, no matter how many serial killers you put in it. The real estate agent hadn't been exaggerating when she said it would need some work, though. The house looked as though it might not have seen human habitation in decades. The dark gray wood was sagging in places, and the roof was missing patches of shingles. The house sat at the end of a very long lane. They hadn't passed any other buildings in the last 10 minutes of the drive, which Mara found surprising. It wasn't far enough from the town to be a serious impediment, but the environment made her feel entirely isolated. The area was heavily wooded, with thin, tall trees. Mara glimpsed a tight, curved tree line at the edge of her backyard. The trunks were all a deep slate gray, which she guessed might have been the inspiration for the house's name. "So," Mara said, "how about we do some exploring?" "You don't think we should wait for Jenny?" "Nah." Mara gave Neil a grin. He grinned back and opened his door. Together, they followed the narrow pebble path towards the building's front door. Half-dead weeds grew high on either side and pushed through the small white rocks below their feet. Tiny insects flicked away with every step. Mara was thankful she'd worn her long jeans instead of her shorts. The building looked increasingly grim as they moved closer. A medley of desiccated, torn cobwebs hung about the awning. Half the windows had cracked panes, and the other half were entirely broken. Lichen and moss grew across the house's wooden front and clung to the closest trees. Mara jogged up the stairs to the porch and peered through one of the windows. The room beyond was dim and murky thanks to the dirty glass, but she could see the outline of a large armchair. "I think this place is furnished." "Ah, it can't be in good condition," Neil said, looking through the window next to her. "But there might be some salvageable stuff." Mara followed the porch to the door. She expected it to be locked, but to her surprise, the handle turned with a painful screech. The door drifted inwards, and Mara had the impression that she'd broken a seal. The air that came through the opening smelt heavy and musty and cold. The windows had built up too much grime to let much natural sunlight in, making the inside seem washed out. Mara stepped over the threshold and found herself in a large entry room. A staircase ran up the back wall. An archway stood to her left and right, opening into a dining room and sitting room respectively. There didn't seem to be any light switches. Mara moved into the sitting room. She'd been right. It was furnished, though the viability of the pieces were dubious. 2 moth-eaten, mildewy armchairs sat beside the empty fireplace. A rocking chair rested under the window. Mara nudged it with her foot, and it creaked painfully as it rolled back on its struts. A badly decayed cross-stitch piece hung on one wall. Blue and pink flowers surrounding the words, "Home is where the heart is." Mara wrinkled her nose. "Ew." She walked into the dining room and found Neil standing at the table. His lips were set in an unhappy firmness, and she moved forward to see what had disturbed him. The dining room had 5 sets of plates laid out, and 3 serving trays sat in its center. Some of the cutlery was propped on the plate's edges, as though the occupants had been interrupted in the middle of a meal. The setting was covered in dust, and there were dark stains, dried sauces, decayed vegetables, Mara thought. next to the shriveled, leathered lumps that were barely identifiable as meat. One of the glasses had shattered, and its shards were scattered across the off-white tablecloth. "Wow," Mara whispered, leaning closer to inspect the dehydrated food. "It's like their meal was disturbed, and they never came back." Neil made a vaguely unhappy noise in the back of his throat, and when Mara reached forward to poke one of the dried lumps, he grabbed her hand. "Don't touch it." "Why? I'm pretty sure they're not going to finish it." "Mara," Neil hissed, trying to choke back his anxious laughter. Okay. Let's check out the rest of the place. I can't believe the house's owners just left stuff like this, though. No wonder they can't sell the building." Neil hadn't released his hold on Mara's hand, and she didn't try to pull free. She liked the way his fingers felt. They were rough and calloused from woodworking, and delightfully strong. The juxtaposition between Neil's intimidating physical attributes and his kitten-sweet personality always gave her a thrill. She led him towards the stairs at the back of the entry room. The wood groaned under their feet, and Mara paused after the fourth step. "This isn't going to collapse, is it?" Neil bounced on the step experimentally. "It shouldn't. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with the structure. It's just old wood." "Good." Mara kept climbing, pausing again at the halfway point to clear a cobweb out of their path. The top of the stairs opened out into a long hallway, with multiple doors opening in each direction. Mara tried the first, and found a fully decorated bedroom. She scrunched her nose at the sight of a multitude of dead moths littering the floor. "How long since anyone's lived here?" It would have to be a while." Neil let go of her hand to open the wardrobe door. A half-dozen moths fluttered out, and he waved them away. "I'd say at least a decade." Mara went to the window. It overlooked the backyard, or what was left of it. The forest behind the house was gradually taking it over. Weeds grew so high that she thought they would reach her waist. Small trees poked through the lawn, and shrubs clustered around what might have once been a stone bench. The clearing was a decent size, though. Large enough to hold vegetable gardens and a patio. Any idea how far these woods go?" Mara asked. Probably a fair way." Neil sounded distracted, and Mara turned. He stood facing the door. His fingers drifted over a cluster of marks on the wood. Then he withdrew his hand as though he'd been burnt. He stepped away from the door, his nostrils flaring, and a tight scowl on his forehead. "There's blood in these scores." "Huh?" She nudged him out of the way and bent close to the door. There were long scratches in the wood. The white paint had clearly been cleaned, but tiny flecks of something dark remained in the notches. She turned back to Neil, who was running his thumbs over his short fingernails. His lips were set in a tight line. "What? You think someone was locked in this room and tried to claw their way out?" He didn't answer, so Mara took his hand to stop the anxious motion. "Come on. It's a weird house, and it's making you nervous. These marks were probably made by a dog. And black flecks are dirt they couldn't scrub out." "Probably." Neil nudged the door open with his foot, and Mara had a sneaking suspicion he didn't trust her theory. Did you want to see more of the house? Hell yes. Mara followed the hallway and looked into each room as she passed. Some were bare, and others were fully furnished. One had an antique rusted crib below the window, with a dead-eyed doll propped in its corner. This is a really magnificent building. Why has it been empty for so long? A killer called it home for 4 years, but there's got to be more wrong with it than just that. Surely. Mara turned and found Neil waiting for her in the doorway. Hey, Neil, what do you think about the guy who lived here? Robert Kahn? Not much. In the early 1900s, there was a spate of disappearances, mostly children, in this area that was eventually attributed to Kant. He was a bit of a local legend. Jenny said he lived here for the last 4 years of his life. Do you think he killed anyone in this house? The smile looked forced. Probably. Maybe. I think I heard that one of his attended victims escaped and gave away his location to the police. That could have been this house. Huh. Mara turned back to the cot. Darling, sweetheart, light of my life. Why the questions? I just want to know why no one's bought the place. I can't imagine it being empty for a few years, but this long? What's wrong with it? Mara bent to pick the doll up, but a screech of tires interrupted her. She peered through the window and saw breathless Jenny climbing out of her hot pink car. Come on, Mara said. We better go meet Jenny before she breaks her neck. I can't believe she's wearing high heels to visit a house like this. That is the end of Chapter 3.
Dun, dun, dun.
The plot thickens.
Did you purposely slap that there, Rygone?
Take a look at this next chapter. Each chapter seems like it's about the same length. Maybe even a little shorter. Let me know when everyone's ready and I'll continue.
I'm ready.
Yep, go for it.
Alrighty. Chapter 4. Offers. They made it to the front door as Jenny neared the end of the pathway. As Mara had predicted, the plump, middle-aged woman was fighting a losing battle to keep her shoes stable on the white stones. For once, she had an excuse to be breathless when she greeted them. Oh, there you are, honey. And you have found a way into the house? Yeah, the door was unlocked. Mara extended her hand to shake Jenny's, then moved aside so Neil could do the same. She couldn't help but notice that Neil received a far warmer smile. Well, that's meant to be locked. Well, you got a head start on the inspection. That's good. Jenny looked as though she would dearly like to sit down, but was going to great pains to avoid touching the cobwebbed wood. She tugged on the front of her blouse to fan the fabric, as she fixed a plastic smile to her face. A bit muggy today, huh? All right. So this is the Blackwood house. It was built in the late 1800s by a woodcutter. As you can see, it's held up remarkably well for its age. Lone Shingle, unable to cling to its precarious perch any longer, slid off the edge of the roof and crashed into the driveway behind them. Jenny pretended not to notice. I know you're eager to settle on a house quickly, honey. Until the plumbing still works. The last owners redid it, but there's no electricity, I'm afraid. Though you have a magnificent fireplace to keep you warm at night, and of course it has excellent insulation. Mara glanced upward at the multiple gaping holes in the roof. It took a great deal of self-control to bite her tongue. And I know being plugged in is important for you young folks. You'll be happy to know that Blackwood House has an excellent compatibility with the internets. Oh my gosh. Mara murmured just loud enough that Neil could hear her. He smothered a smile as he squeezed her hand. Breathless Jenny had fished her phone out of her pocket to demonstrate, and frowned at the lack of service bars. It's usually compatible. The internets are probably having some power issues today. My gosh, Mara repeated. Neil squeezed her hand harder. Jenny put her phone away with a nervous chuckle. It was working last time I was here, though that was a while ago. But I'm sure you can find someone to install some extra internets if you need them. Mara was speechless. Neil cleared his throat to keep Jenny from noticing the incredulous, enthralled look on Mara's face. You said the last owners redid the plumbing. How long ago was that? Let's see now. I suppose it would be a little over 20 years ago? Neil whistled. Huh. It's been empty a while. Yes, honey. Jenny's arms started towards the house, and Mara caught a flicker of anxiety in them. The deaths, you know? It's not... that is... She collected herself, and continued in a bright voice. But it's perfect for a young couple like yourselves. There's plenty of room for a big family. So, Robert Kant did kill people here, Mara said. Jenny's smile faltered. Excuse me? You said there were deaths here. How many? Jenny fished a crumpled contract out of her pocket and used it to fan herself. Awfully muggy today, isn't it? And I believe there were 6 victims, plus one who got away. Are they all children? Mara took a half step closer, and Jenny impulsively stepped backwards. Well, sure we could look up the details for you if you really... Jenny trailed off, and Mara let the silence extend until it was uncomfortable. Last, fanning herself so quickly that the contract flapped uselessly. The first was the house's original owner. Then Kant killed 3 boys and 2 girls, all under 15. The last, intended victim, managed to escape and notify police. 6 victims in 4 years. Mara mused, glancing back at the house. And you said Robert Kant was hung? Neil took mercy on their sweating realtor. He hung himself before the police reached him, he murmured. Sweetheart, this is a tiny bit morbid. We can look up the details later if you like. No, that's okay. Just to clarify, after he killed the house's original owner, Kant moved into the house, and no one knew? Jenny looked nauseous, but she nodded. Wow. It was a really different time back then, huh? Mara's brain was buzzing. She crossed her arms as she regarded the building. 6 murders, plus the killer's own demise, would explain the house's low price. She'd still have to hire an inspector to check for further issues, that it was no longer impossible to imagine why no one would buy the building. That's nothing to deter me, though. It's just bricks and wood. Yes, people died here. Yes, children died here. But people have expired in almost every old house in the country. A building's history doesn't damage its future potential as a home. How much? She asked. Jenny, caught off guard, stopped fanning herself. Pardon? Honey? How much is the house? Well, the asking price is significantly less than your budget. And the owner is open to negotiations, too. Laura gestured towards the lawn in front of them. And what land comes with the property? Jenny's mascara was starting to bleed as sweat ran into her eyes. But she managed to maintain a staunch smile. I can get the exact survey records for you at the office. But it's a bit over 4 acres. It extends down the driveway and a little into the woods behind the house. Great. Thanks. Can we have another look around? Absolutely, honey. Jenny jiggled the doorknob, but it wouldn't turn. She blinked at it. Did you lock the door behind yourself? Mara and Neil glanced at each other and shook their heads. Oh, God. Well, it was supposed to be locked anyway. Hang on a second, honey. Jenny fished a rusted metal key out of her pocket and fitted it into the handle. The lock scraped open, and Jenny pushed the door inwards, then stepped back so Mara and Neil could go ahead of her. Mara caught a glimpse of Jenny's trembling, manicured fingers. He really hates his house, huh? It really is quite muggy, she said as she passed Jenny. Would you like to stay outside where there's a breeze? Neil and I can have a look around ourselves. This time, the smile was genuine. Oh, sure thing, honey. Take as much time as you like. The door creaked closed behind them, sealing out the quiet hum of insects and the rustling trees. Mara took a deep breath and swiveled to face Neil. Well, what do you think? His eyebrows rose. You're actually considering this place? You're not? She laughed. This is halfway to a mansion for the price of a condo. 4 acres. It's surrounded by trees, too. You're always saying I should be healthier. Trees are healthy. You really don't mind the building? The history doesn't bother you? Not at all. Mara shrugged. You know I'm not superstitious. This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance, Neil. I know it's miles bigger than I actually need, but I am really going to turn it down in favor of some pokey 2-room apartment. Neil shook his head, but a broad smile had grown over his face. You're remarkable, Mara. Okay, let me have a look around and make sure this place isn't about to collapse on us. Mara spent the following half hour drifting from room to room as Neil kicked the walls and opened cupboards. Every few minutes, he made a stifled noise of revulsion as his search turned up dead mice and cockroaches. The more she saw of the building, the more enthralled Mara found herself. It had an almost magnetic charm. Even the flaws, the warping wood, the crooked cupboard doors, and the old-fashioned furniture added to its appeal. She could feel her pulse jumping as she rubbed her fingers over the dusty banister. My house. Yes, that feels right somehow. This is my house. Neil, coated in dust, came through the right dining room entrance. He brushed his hands on his pants. Okay, the basic structure seems solid. There's some wood rot, but really, it's far better than I would have expected. I can't find any signs of termite, but they probably wanted an expert to check anyway. I haven't looked at the roof. Based on what we saw outside, I'm guessing it would need a fair bit of work. But I can't find any major deal breakers. Mara's heart thundered. A giddy, foolish smile bubbled up inside of her until she couldn't contain it any longer. Neil, I think I'm gonna buy this house. You're gonna buy this house? I'm gonna buy this house! She threw herself at Neil. He caught her up and twirled her around as though she weighed nothing. She was breathing too hard to return his kiss properly, and pretty soon they were both laughing. Congratulations, sweetheart! Neil gave her a final, firm hug, then placed her back on the floor. It'll need a lot of work to be livable, but we can fix it up over the next few months. We? Mara echoed. Neil snorted and brushed loose strands of her hair off her forehead. I'm not about to leave you to deal with this mess yourself. Joel won't mind if I cut back my hours a bit, and I can bring tools from work for when we need them. Mara hesitated. Are you sure? It's a big job, and I can't pay you. Nepotism makes the world go around, sweetheart. Let me do this for you. If it makes you feel better, you can call it your birthday present. Mara hesitated. Neil stooped to her level and smiled into her eyes. Besides, it'll give me an excuse to spend some more time with you. And that's all I really want. Fine, all right. Mara pulled Neil close to kiss him. His lips were warm and pliant, and she felt him relax against her as she tangled her hands in his hair. It was a delicious sensation. She pulled back reluctantly. Thank you. Anytime. Neil was grinning. Want to go break the news to our poor realtor? Yeah, this place really freaks her out. She deserves the commission. That is the end of chapter 4.
Uh-oh.
Well, looks like she's buying the house.
She's buying the definitely not creepy and haunted house.
Oh yeah.
Her fate
I'll
is
be on.
sealed.
I'll be honest. You know, a house like that with that kind of history, don't know if I could do it. Just having that in the back of your mind would just... it'd just be uncomfortable. How you doing, Rex?
I am venoming it up.
Heck yeah.
Saw it as being a great. Oh shit! Oh no! Okay, I'm just gonna do this to counter your thing. Haha.
Oh, chapter 5 is really small.
Chapter 5. The house was haunted. Now chapter 6.
House was haunted-er.
So I need to kill Mantis because oof.
Mantis.
Definitely playing Venom better than I can play anybody else. I cannot play Magneto. He's like a weird Reinhardt or something. I don't know.
Me
Hello
take
there.
another quick drink. How much longer do you plan on going, Zim?
Like I said, at this time, about 2 more hours.
2 more hours? Alright. Yeah, you got me for at least 2 more hours, I suppose.
Like I said, I got therapy at,
Oh, yeah. Today's your therapy day.
yeah.
Are you sure you want me to be reading a ghost story before you go into therapy?
What's the worst that could happen?
Well, Rygone, she's trying, the author is really trying to push her to be like the, well, I don't believe in this kind of stuff kind of character. I will admit, though, the lack of hesitation on her part is a bit odd. But whatever. I didn't grow up with a bunch of seances and stuff like that. I just got banned from Pokemon when I was a kid. Alrighty. Shall we do chapter 5?
Well, I won't. I'm personally, I would say that she doesn't really feel aroused by the idea to me. But I can also understand the excitement there. It's like, especially with the market the way it is right now, finding a house that you can actually afford. So it's got a.
That's what told me this story is like taking place in like the 1990s or something.
Ooh, Salt. What did you just do up there? I just saw you kill everybody. GG.
Salt did what Salt does.
Nice. Great heals, by the way. I was playing some frontline, but I would not be. Yep, good stuff.
Yeah,
I thought it was you playing the shark, actually. Huh.
Rygen's actually correct. Within mental health, we do consider the word arousal not to necessarily mean sexual arousal, but rather a raise in emotional affect and energy.
Fair. But I can still understand why she's, I can very much understand why she's excited about this.
Yeah.
Like, this is basically dream come true kind of affordability in a house.
Yeah, I mean, 2 stories with an attic for, the price of a condo, like she said. That's good stuff. I'll never be able to
Not
get
to
there.
mention,
Good for her.
Not to mention the amount of land that she gets with it.
Mm-hmm.
It really is basically a mansion.
I'll be honest, though, I could do without the land. I'm not the biggest fan when it comes to upkeeping woods and stuff.
Oh, I'm there with you on that one, but it's still, referring to why she could be excited like that.
Yeah. I just hope that she doesn't get a dog and it just dies.
It has been fun, but I am going to bow out. 6 a.m. I think I'll get ready to start getting ready to sleep.
Alright, sleep
good.
well.
So, thanks for joining me for all the games and everyone. Of course, Rygone, Sim, it's been cool. Good luck on the rest of the stream.
Yeah.
Fun.
Sleep well.
You awesome, man.
I wonder who I'm gonna raid. Oh snap.
Clearly
Sorry.
Rygone.
No, clearly Zim.
That's a good question. You're both going until 8 a.m., right? And you said you were going to stop at 6? How long are you going for, Rygone?
I mean, I'll probably go until Zim stops. I mean, I'm already up all night anyway, and I'll be heading into the office a bit early.
Gotcha. That raid's already pretty much started, so yeah, I'm just finished. Yeah, finish it out. Let's go. Yeah. Thank you for the biddies. I appreciate that. All right. I'll do my outro after the raid since I'm still in the voice so haha.
Sure.
Well, I will see y'all for Friday night.
This hamlet
All right.
fall.
Do not let
See
the
you
hammer
then.
fall.
Rick Strider raided my stream with
Yeah, Rick.
25 viewers.
Yep. Y'all
Thank
have a
you for
red
the
night
raid,
and a
huh?
dino. No problem. Love ya. Red night, Dino Test today. See y'all when we do the the Dead Rising 2 tomorrow. But yeah, that'll probably be around, I want to say 3-ish, 4-ish. Until then, I shall fade away into the ether. Bye.
All right, I'm gonna go feed the whiskers.
All
So,
right.
Good.
catch
So,
y'all later.
See
see
ya.
ya. Now there's just you and I and you.
Hurrah!
Alright, I'd say give me just a quick second. I'm gonna go use the facilities and then we'll continue.
Sounds good to me. Alright. I'm getting tired of having to, manually go out and fix stuff, so I'm setting these up to be able to handle that for me. We'll do that. That one goes there. This one will go.
Gotta give him that hook too and spit on that thing. You get me?
Well, hello there, Hype. Startled me there for a moment. Yeah, that'll take care of that. Do this, this, and this. Oh, I can drop near. I do need some more of these. There. Get a whole bunch of them made. Now, the next question is, the best means of getting stone over there. I don't think it would be via this. We've got our stone mine here, but this is only gonna last so long. So it'd be better to feed it from our existing, actual, you know, logistics network, whatever you want to call it. Why is my science not going? Why are we out of green and red science over here? Did I break something? Oh, right. That, oops. I forgot I cut those off. Well, let's get that fixed. And there we go. I haven't actually been, I've never actually launched the rocket in this game. And now I'm playing modded, where, well, launching the rocket is, basically the beginning of the game. So, you know, gonna be an interesting, process here. I don't like how damaged that one got. We definitely...
Just put something away real quick.
No worries. I definitely need to get this stuff going. Let's come over here. I think this is where I basically start my whole process. We can upgrade it later. Come over here. And just stick this down. Feed in, feed in, feed in. Now, Control B. There's the stone. It is going way up there. Oh, wait, did I did not. Oh,
Alright,
wait, I did. Oh, right, I turned off the alt. Welcome back.
Alright, finally got some ice water.
Hello, Ido. And
Hey,
good,
Sepseg.
good.
I'm thinking for the pets. Go ahead.
I just said good, good.
Alrighty, I'd say let's go ahead and continue. If you're ready.
I am ready. Carry on.
Alright. Taking a quick drink. Chapter 5. History. They found Jenny pacing up and down the porch, feverishly sucking on a cigarette. She stubbed it out on the banister when Neil cleared his throat. Well, how'd it go? Not quite what you were looking for? Mara couldn't keep the smile off her face. No, it's great. I'll take it. Breathless Jenny's eyebrows shot up. She blinked twice before she could fix her smile, then laughed nervously. Really? You want it? I shrugged. Yeah, I want it. Oh, Oh, okay, great. That's fantastic. Should we? Despite having spun the most positive sales pitch she could manage, Jenny seemed completely unprepared for her client's interest. She looked from Mara to the house and back again, and her smile slowly fizzled. It wasn't the expression Mara had expected. She thought breathless Jenny would be delighted to unload a house she clearly disliked. Instead, she looked frightened. Crap, there's going to be a major flaw in the building after all. I should have known it was too good to be true. What is it? Does it flood? Asbestos? Rabid squirrels in the forest? Sweetheart, Jenny said as gently as she could. I need to warn you. No, warn isn't the right word. That is... Yes? Mara said. Neil shifted closer to rub his hand across her back. She took a deep, slow breath and said in a kinder tone, "What is it, Jenny?" Jenny, past having scruples about smoking in front of her clients, fished a new cigarette out of her bag. She lit it, took a quick breath, and said, "I want to frighten you, but you should know there are stories about this house. Previous owners have experienced, well, they say they experienced some strange things here of a supernatural nature." Mara could guess where the conversation was heading. Neil squeezed her shoulder. "Stay calm," the gesture said. "Oh, so it's haunted, huh?" Mara managed to keep her voice civil, but her smile was tight. "Okay, no problem. How about we get back to the office and sign some papers? You look like the sort of woman who appreciates a good contract." Jenny's smile dipped. "We're trying to help, honey. You can't be from around these parts, or you'd know this house has a reputation." "I'm sure it does." "Blackwood House was with our agency when I started as a realtor. It was notorious even then, and after what the last family went through..." "Hey, do you want me to buy this place or not?" Jenny sucked on her cigarette, then blew a long stream of smoke towards the trees. When she spoke, she managed to rein her voice back into a bright, friendly cadence. "It's an excellent property, and an absolute bargain for the price. But I am both morally and legally obligated to inform you of any impediments to a mutually happy transaction." "Fine. Go ahead." Mara crossed her arms. She knew her smile was closer to a grimace, but not even Neil's increasingly firm squeezes could calm her. "Inform me. Is it ectoplasm, blood dripping from the ceilings?" Breathless Jenny didn't speak for a moment. Their tenuous civility was nearing breaking point, and she seemed to be trying to speak politely. Footsteps, doors open by themselves, smudgy handprints appear on the walls, strange noises at night." "Okay, great. Anything else?" "And some of the tenants said they saw ghostly figures entering and leaving rooms." Jenny released the last sentence in a quick burst, as though she wanted to get the worst over with as quickly as possible. She glanced at Mara, who gave her a stiff shrug. "Cool. Now can you sell me the damn house?" Jenny's eyes narrowed. "You think I'm making this up?" "Oh, Mara shook Neil's hand off. I think you're regurgitating what you've heard, which is 90% fiction and 10% natural occurrences that have been misconstrued. Look, I know ghosts. I grew up in a house that practically worshipped them. We had seances every damn weekend. When I was 5, my mother told me my dead grandfather stood at the end of my bed and watched me sleep. Do you have any idea how many nightmares that gave me? Mara knew her voice was rising, but she was unable to control it. When I was 10, my dad drowned my pet rabbit because a Ouija board told him to. I started getting panic attacks when I was 12. Any other kid would have been taken to a doctor, any normal kid. But I got to sit in a circle of costume-wearing freaks as they attempted to summon ghosts to heal me. Jenny took a step back. She wore a look Mara was horribly familiar with. Countless strangers had directed at Mara's own parents. This person is crazy, it said. Mara squeezed her hands into fists. She was shaking, and patches of black crept in at the edges of her vision. She lowered her voice, but the hoarse, strained tone still permeated it. I know everything there is to know about ghosts, and I can tell you definitively that there's no such thing. Every single one of the spirit mediums who had dinner with us was a fake. All those seances were manufactured. Every message from the dead, a series of normal, natural events that got twisted and distorted until it held meaning. You want to know if I'm okay living in a ghost-riddled house? Sure thing! Bring it on! Because there's no such thing. Mara, sweetheart. Neil had bent so that his chin rested on her shoulder, and he could whisper into her ear. His hands, those beautiful, strong carpenter's hands, rubbed her arms. Breathe, darling. Mara sucked in a lungful of air. She was dizzy, she realized, and her throat felt raw. She closed her eyes until the unsteadiness passed. When she opened them again, she saw Jenny standing on the edge of the deck, her eyes huge, as she tapped her cigarette anxiously. Damn, Mara breathed. She opened her mouth to apologize, but her tongue wouldn't form the words. Jenny, Neil's gentle voice seemed to diffuse the tension in the air. Everything's okay. We'd still like the house. Why don't you head back to the office, make yourself a nice strong cup of coffee, and relax for the afternoon? You can get in touch tomorrow to organize the purchase. Okay? Jenny dropped the cigarette and stubbed it out with her heel. She looked pale, but she nodded. Yes, of course, honey. Let's do that. She glanced at Mara. Sorry. Mara's anger was fading, and deep humiliation was taking its place. Breathless Jenny recovered her realtor smile with surprising elasticity. She waved the lingering smoke away as she backed down the stairs. It's okay, honey. Nothing to apologize for. This is good. You might be just the sort of person this house needs. Yeah, probably. I'll send the official paperwork through this afternoon. Jenny turned and began the laborious walk across the high-heel hating stone path. You two take care now, whispered, while Neil waved the realtor off with a bright smile. Mara held still until Jenny's hot pink car had disappeared around a bend in the road, and the rows of dark, spindly trees blotted out the color. Felt deeply, hotly ashamed of herself. I've been free for 4 years. I should be past all of that junk. What's wrong with me? She turned to Neil. He stood close to her, one arm around her shoulders to comfort and brace her. She pressed her hand to his chest, felt his heart beating, strong, steady. I'm so sorry, Neil. That was awful. His other arm snaked around her waist to envelop her in a warm hug. Come here. You're still shaking. You want to sit down? I'm fine now. Mara closed her eyes and breathed deeply. Herbs and sawdust. Thanks for fixing everything. But I'm just sorry the house has such a messed up history. Do you still want it? It's not too late to back out. Mara tilted her head to look over Neil's broad shoulder. Black wood's gray walls, adorned with countless spiders' homes, clusters of moss, and blooming stains, hadn't lost any of its charm. If anything, its appeal was growing with each moment she spent near it. Yeah, I definitely want it. More than anything. All right. Let's get some lunch. You'll feel better after food. Sure thing, Mum, Mara said, and Neil grinned as he kissed the top of her head. That is the end of Chapter 5.
All right. Gonna be interesting to see how she gets brutally murdered.
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, this is a 40-chapter book. We got a ways to go for this one.
Ooh.
Indeed. They're pretty short chapters, though. Like, I remember reading as a kid, one chapter was at least 4 of these. Then I also read pretty thick books.
Yeah. But still.
Hey, Chrisovs. Good to see ya. Taking a quick moment, I'm going to take a quick drink. I hope all of you in Zim's stream are enjoying the story. It's definitely not too bad. I mean, at least it's
readable.
Goodness knows I've read other stories where it's just like, huh? What's going on? Character motivation? What's that?
Definitely seen books like that before.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Robert.
Alright. Let me know when you're ready and we'll continue on to Chapter 6.
I am ready.
Alright. We got an interesting little title. Chapter 6. Stalkers and Illusions. I've got to ask. You hate even the mention of spirits, but you're buying an allegedly haunted house. It doesn't bother you? Heck no. Mara snorted as she dismantled her burger. They were sitting at the back booth of one of the town's cozier cafes. Neil had a steak with extra salad. Mara had ordered a burger with a double serving of chips and had threatened to add pancakes before she was done. Because it's not haunted. Amusement hovered in Neil's shining blue eyes as he watched her divide each layer of the burger into its own neat pile. He still wore the tightness around his lips, though, and Mara knew the realtor's story had, in some slight way, unsettled him. Even though no one else wants to stay there? Even after what they've experienced? There are 3 simple explanations. Food compartmentalized, Mara began shoveling it into her mouth. First, mass delusion. It's more common than you might think. Imagine 5 people are in a room. One person says, can you smell that? Another person says, oh yeah, it's like boiled cabbage. A third person agrees. All of a sudden, even you can smell it. The air's perfectly clear, but because everyone is telling you to smell the boiled cabbage, you become convinced you can. And there's a mass illusion about Blackwood? Could be. You've already got the perfect setup for a classic haunted house narrative. A serial killer's home. All you need is for one occupant to say there's a ghost. Suddenly, every other family that lives there can feel presences following them and claims the door open all on their own. The more people parrot these claims, the more prevalent they become. Of course, you'll probably have a few enablers on the way. People who like their drama so much that they invent stories just for kicks. And their families will follow along like the happy fools they are. If you're expecting and looking for a ghost, you can bet you're gonna find one. Okay, mass delusion. Deal nudged his side of salad towards Mara, but she shoved it back. That's one explanation. What else? There could be a physical catalyst. A gas leak can create highly realistic paranoid hallucinations. And many supposed hauntings have been attributed to EMF emissions, which can make you see and hear things that aren't real, and induce a feeling of terror. Have something green. No. The third option, and arguably the most interesting, is a house stalker. Pardon? Stalkers don't exclusively focus on people. Sometimes they can obsess over objects, such as houses. It's not uncommon, but it does happen. There may have been a stalker who frightened each new occupant away so that he could have the house all to himself. It's surprisingly easy to manufacture a fake ghost. Huh. Imagine trying to talk your house into getting a restraining order. He's no good for you, honey. Oh, that's a weird sentence. He's no good for you, honey. He doesn't respect your walls. A scout. You're not taking this seriously. I'm taking this very seriously. It's important that your house feels safe at night. She gave his chest a playful slap. Okay, Gil said, grabbing her hand and kissing its back before she could pull it away. So where does that leave you? It's all ridiculously simple. Firstly, I know ghosts don't exist, so I'm in no danger of succumbing to the mass delusion effect. I'll get someone to check for gas leaks and EMF emissions, and time should have fixed any danger of house stalkers. It's only been 20 years since the house's last occupants. Yeah, but remember, it's been a long-term problem, since early 1900s. Even if the stalker started when he was a teenager, he'd be dead by now, or at least way too old to be a serious threat. Well, that's it then. It comes down to boiled cabbage, gas, or stalkers. Exactly. There's nothing wrong with Blackwood that can't be fixed with a few simple tools, and it's mine. Mara laughed. The reality was starting to sink in, and with it came nearly hysterical excitement and anxiety. I have a house, Neil. All mine. He beamed at her. You deserve it. I'm so happy you found a place you like. That's the incredible thing. I don't just like it, I love it. It's ridiculously big for just one person, though. I'll probably go insane trying to keep it clean. But there's actually room for a garden out in the back. Do you like gardening? I've never done it before, but I'd like to. Mara felt giddy and shoved her half-eaten food to one side. Neil offered her his hand, and she took it gratefully. The contract helped center and focus her, but the contact helped center and focus her. He rubbed his thumb over her knuckles fondly. It probably won't seem too big with another person living there. Mara was breathless, as she didn't dare look at Neil's face. I mean, you'd fill it up pretty well. Yeah? If you wanted. Neil squeezed her hand. I can't leave Mum right now. Oh. Oh, yeah, of course. Mara tried to pull her hand back, but Neil tightened his grip. He brought his second hand under her chin to raise her head, so that she couldn't avoid his eyes. But that isn't going to be permanent. And then I'd love to help fill up that house. You know, Jenny was right. It's the perfect size for a family, if that's something you want. His smile was one of the most beautiful things Mara had ever seen. She was glad she was sitting. She didn't think her legs would hold her up. Yeah. I love you, Neil whispered. Mara tried to lean forward to kiss him, but the booth's table stopped her short. He laughed and bent towards her, meeting her in the middle, and her heart flipped as his lips grazed over hers. Mara, he whispered, and his hand caressed her cheek and pulled her close so that he could kiss her properly. All done here? The waitress's frosty voice cut through Mara's daze, and she and Neil broke their kiss and collapsed back into their seats. Neil mumbled an apology, but Mara pushed her plates toward the edge of the table. Actually, can I get some pancakes? The waitress didn't answer, but turned on a simpering smile on Neil. Anything for you, honey? I'm good, thanks. Sure thing. The waitress didn't take her eyes off him as she scooped the plates up. Mara couldn't fail to notice how much effort the waitress was put into sashaying her hips as she returned to the kitchen. What a jerk. She was used to Neil attracting attention. He had an easy, comforting aura. His strong jaw, captivating smile, and muscles that stood out even under loose clothes certainly didn't hurt either. Luckily for her, he was almost always oblivious to flirtation. His eyebrows drew together. You look worried. Mara shook her frown off and laughed. No, just thinking about how lucky I am. With the house? Yeah. It's actually sort of surprising Jenny didn't suggest it before today. She'd probably given up trying to sell it. That too. Mara tilted her head to one side. But that wasn't what I was thinking of. How'd I end up with you, Neil? Why'd you ask me out? Neil's eyes crinkled as he smiled, and he raised his hand to caress her cheek. You were sitting under the big elm in the park and reading Emma. I couldn't get over how beautiful you looked. It took me at least 20 minutes to get up the courage to ask you out, you know? Heat rose in Mara's cheeks. She couldn't keep herself from leaning into his touch. And you've been stuck with me ever since. I'm broken. I have enough baggage to fill a freighter plane. I yell at our realtor, but you have all your crap put together. You could have any girl you wanted. I want you. Neil's eyes, sweet and firm, captivated Mara. Perfect conviction laced his every word. I want you more than I've ever wanted a woman before. When I'm near you, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Mara closed her eyes and nuzzled his hand. Stop being so nice. Only when you stop being so lovable. That made Mara chuckle. Want to get out of here? I don't mind. What about your pancakes? I'm pretty sure that waitress is going to spit in the batter. Let's go. That is the end of chapter 6.
Well, alright then.
Oh, chapter 7 is really short. Alright, let me take another quick drink. Alright. Ready to continue?
Yes, go for it.
Alrighty. You can't wait for the twist to be that it's really perfectly fine. Mara's cackling like a witch. Chapter 7. Location. Breathless Jenny turned out to be a surprisingly staunch ally in Mara's fight to move house. With a rental contract ending with a month, Mara's days were filled with phone calls to arrange inspections, pay taxes, chase up forms that were moving sluggish, beg for expedition whenever it was possible, and of course, the eternal search for a new job. They cut it close. Mara was on the last day of her contract when Jenny dropped off Blackwood House's keys with an anxiously whispered, "Good luck, honey." Mara waved to the hot pink car as it crawled out of her alley, then opened her fist to grin at the tarnished, rusty key. My own home. It may be a dump, but it's my dump. She fished her mobile out and left a message on Neil's phone while she climbed the stairs to her apartment. He was at work, and likely wouldn't finish until late in the afternoon. Mara would have to be patient. She needed his car to move her few possessions. Mara wiggled the door handle until it opened, and entered her room for the final time. It felt incredible that, after 4 years, she'd finally have a house of her own. The incessant sacrifices and innumerable cut corners had paid off. She owned very little that she wanted to take with her besides her wardrobe. Just her phone, toiletries, a collection of gifts from Neil, and a small bag of tinned food she bought to get her through her first day at Blackwood. She hadn't seen the building since the inspection 2 weeks previously, and didn't want to commit herself to any large purchases until she had a better feel for what she needed. Mara crossed to the window and sat in the small plastic chair. She tried to immerse herself in an e-book on her phone to pass the time, but couldn't stop checking the clock every few minutes. After half an hour of futile half-distraction, she put the phone down and leaned on the sill to watch the alley. Her heart skipped a beat at the sight of the silver car parked at the curb below. Neil. He must have gotten my message and left work early. Car wasn't idling, which meant Neil was coming inside. Mara grimaced as she turned around. In the 6 months they'd been dating, Mara had never invited Neil into her room. She'd seen his house. His family wasn't quite wealthy, but they were very comfortably upper middle class, and their home had been decorated with a great deal of care. Rows of photos hung on the wall and cluttered the lace-coated mantels. The furniture had a quaint, homey vibe, and there were bowls of potpourri in the bathroom. It was the polar opposite of Mara's apartment. Mara knew Neil wouldn't like her home, and she'd been hoping to avoid an uncomfortable scene by never letting him see it. Maybe I can head him off on the stairs. A brisk knock made her cringe. Damn. Too late now. Mara crossed to the door. took a breath to brace herself, and pulled it open. Hey, I got your message. Ready to... Neil paused in the entryway as his eyes roved over the one-room home. Mara's mattress, a bed frame would have been too expensive, was propped against one wall. A portable cooker, single pot, plate, and spoon sat opposite. The foldable dining table and the plastic chair sat below the window, and a cardboard portable wardrobe held her clothes. Mara felt color rise in her face. She kept her home clean. Her clothes were arranged neatly and washed often. She'd painted the windowsill with a half bucket of white paint someone had thrown away, but she still knew it was a pathetic living compared to what Neil enjoyed, and mingled embarrassment and injured pride scorched at her insides. Neil took a step into the room and swore. That startled Mara. She'd never heard anything harsher than fake swears. Cripes, shoot, and sugar were his favorites. Leave his lips. Mara, he broke off and pressed one hand to his mouth. His voice was thick. Have you seriously been living here? Of course I have. Mara crossed her arms defensively. Neil's eyes scanned the seeping cracks that ran up one wall, and the exposed wires clustered in one corner. His mouth turned into a hard line. I had no idea. You should have said something. And what? She knew an aggressive tone was crawling into her voice, but she couldn't find it. Neil blinked at her, brows constricted. You could have stayed with me. I know you don't like Mum's home, but we could have gotten an apartment together. I don't need you white knighting your way into my life and solving my problems, she snapped. I've been quite comfortable on my own. Thank you. Reply. But she could see the hurt in his eyes. Her anger deflated like an eviscerated balloon. Crap. He wasn't judging her. She knew. He was berating himself for not having helped. Neil was a fixer. The desire to solve problems was as central to his personality as Mara's love of hot chips was to hers. And seeing a problem he could have fixed, but hadn't, was agony for him. More than that, he worried about her. Even after 6 months of dating, Mara still wasn't used to having another human altruistically interested in her welfare. It unsettled her almost as much as she liked it. Mara's pride still stung, but the expression on Neil's face cooled the burn. She stepped close to him and reached up to lace her fingers around the back of his neck. She pulled his head down until their foreheads met. Then she smiled into his wide blue eyes. Hey, I'm sorry I snapped, but I survived 3.5 years without you, remember? And I'm proud that I did. I want to make my way through this world on my own 2 feet. Neil sighed heavily. His arms wrapped around her lower back and pulled her close, capturing her. She found she didn't mind at all. His large hand stroked her back, and she shivered at the sensation. I know, he said, and I admire that. I could have helped if you said something. He shuddered. Did you even have enough to eat? Crap. No wonder you always seemed hungry. Mara kissed him hard. This stunned him into silence. When she pulled back, she couldn't stop herself from laughing. Jeez, no. It's not that dire. I just hate cooking. And your food is freakishly tasty. Listen, I could have had a nicer apartment if I'd wanted it, but I'd been saving instead. I wanted my own place. The more money I spend on useless things like televisions and curtains and, I don't know, white picket fences or whatever fancy housewives spend their money on, the longer it would have taken to buy a house. I was comfortable. Don't you dare feel sorry for me, Neil. I'm finally getting everything I've wanted, all on my own efforts, and I feel damn good about it. Neil studied her eyes, testing for honesty, then nodded. Okay, let's get you to that new house then. Do you need help packing? Hang on a second. Mara pecked his lips a final time, then ducked out of his grip, picked an empty cardboard box off the foot of her bed, and went to the window ledge. She'd arranged Neil's gifts there to brighten her room, and she swept them into the box in a smooth motion. Grabbed the wardrobe and were ready to go. Hesitated. You don't want anything else? Nah, it all sucks. Come on, I've got a somewhat large but equally sucky house to move into. Finally, Neil smiled. It was what Mara had been waiting for, and she felt all of the tension melt away. He picked up the cardboard wardrobe in a fluid motion, braced it against his shoulder, and followed her out of the door. This time, Mara didn't bother kicking it closed. That is the end of Chapter 7.
Yeah. I am just waiting for things to go absolutely horribly wrong.
Well, Chapter 8 is literally 3 pages, so who knows? Maybe this one's it.
Fair enough.
Let me go ahead and get another drink. Hey, Rayshella. Yeah, I'm actually doing some storytelling tonight. You got me for at least another hour, then I probably should head into work. Gonna go into work a bit early so I can finish up some stuff.
Oh, looks like Whiskers is done.
Oh, very nice.
Thanks for joining, Whiskers.
See you, man.
Also, hello there, Candy.
Hello there, Blueberry. Good to see you. Doing a very early morning stream. Just doing some storytelling for Zim here. We're reading a ghost story. Who's in call with me? It's Zim, just like I said.
Hey, Raharu. Yeah, it's just me here.
And just to be clear... what's up, Rayshella? Zim is not a ghost? Oh. Also, Blueberry says hello.
Hello.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take another drink and we'll bang out this next chapter. Alrighty. Zim is a friendly ghost if he is one. Oh, he's very friendly. Highly recommend you check out his channel. Raw_Zim. Good guy. You'll like his stuff.
And no, I'm not the ghost. That's Whiskers. I wouldn't dare to claim to be, you know... I don't know where I'm going with this. Claim to be a ghost.
The friendly ghost can be. Alright, we ready?
Yep.
Alright. Chapter 8. Compromises. Holy crap. I don't think I could buy a boyfriend as good as you are. Mara, nestled in the car's overly large passenger seat, dug through the brown paper bag Neil had given her. She found it impossible to choose just one item. She pulled out both the chocolate and the meat pie and began alternating bites of each. There's some muffins Mom baked too, Neil said, not trying to disguise his delight as he watched Mara out of the corner of his eye. And there's a really nice apple and walnut salad. Dear, sweet Neil, will you ever learn? Mara found the salad container and smiled at it fondly. You can eat this later. She tossed the plastic packet into the back seat, then turned as it made a strange thudding noise. Hey, what's with all the boxes? Just some equipment. From work? Mm-hmm. Thanks for picking me up so quickly, by the way. Mara returned to the chocolate with gusto. Did you have to cut your shift very short? Not too badly. Autumn's usually a slow time of year anyway, so Joel doesn't mind me reducing my hours. Neil was a partner in his carpentry business and had a small crew working under him. Mara had met the other partner, Joel, a few times and thought he was a little too affable for his own good. So... Neil drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. He was trying to sound casual, but Mara knew him too well. She narrowed her eyes. What is it? Oh, nothing. I was just thinking. Give it to me straight. I'm a big girl. Chuckled, and the tension dropped from his shoulders. I can't hide anything from you, can I? All right. I know how important being independent is for you, and I really like that, but you want to help. Mara took another large bite of the meat pie to hide her smile, as Neil exhaled deeply. Well, yeah, we've been together for a while. I want to be able to do things for you once in a while. Mara dropped the uneaten food back into the bag and folded the top over. You already do way more than you should. You're constantly buying me food. It's going to make me fat, by the way. And you've already offered to help with the house's repairs. I'd say that's plenty. The house is kind of what's bothering me, actually. Neil kept his eyes fixed on the road, but Mara could tell he was distracted. The speedometer was hovering slightly over the legal limit. Go on. It's a mess, Mara. The roof is collapsing. It's full of rotting furniture and dead bugs, and there's no phone reception. If something happened to you... You checked the house out yourself and said it's sound. It's not about a collapse on me. Ugh. I could have made a mistake, though. What if the floor gives out, or you step on a rusty nail, or the boiled cabbage stalker is still hanging around? Boiled cabbage... You're mixing up my metaphors, Neil. My point is, it's at least 5 hours walk to town, and you don't have a car. If anything goes wrong, you'd be trapped with no way to communicate with the outside world. I'm not asking you to move in with me or anything. Just let me arrange a hotel room for you until the worst of the issues are fixed. You've got a better chance of convincing me to eat one of your salads. Neil sighed heavily. Mara... I know. She squeezed his arm. You want to help. And I really, truly appreciate that. But I'm also really, truly excited to live in my new house. The damage isn't anywhere near as bad as you're making it out to be. And I'm confident in my ability to defend myself if I bump into a geriatric stalker. Please, please, don't be anxious about me. Neil worried at his lower lip. The car was coasting nearly 10 kilometers faster than it should have been. Would you be open to a compromise? What did you have in mind? Could I stay with you tonight, just in case? Mara tilted her head to one side and tried not to grin too broadly. A sleepover? That's not a compromise at all. You're more than welcome. The car began to slow down. Great. I can stay until 8 the following morning. Then I'd have to get to my work. Is that all right with you? Absolutely. A thought struck her, and she raised her eyebrows. Will your mother be okay with it? She quite liked Neil's mother, Pam, but the older woman held what Mara could only describe as traditional values. I already ran it past her. She'll be fine by herself for tonight. Then we'll be all alone. Together. It's absolutely scandalous. Grinned. Let me put it this way. I'm her only child, and still unmarried at 26. I think I could take up residence at a bordello and she'd turn a blind eye provided it produced some grandchildren. Mara had to laugh. That is the end of chapter 8.
You weren't kidding, that was short.
Mm-hmm. But, it's certainly taken a while to get to the spookies.
Yeah.
I know it's a 40 chapter book, but I mean, we're almost 10 chapters in. That's a fourth of the book right there.
Yeah. There's certainly things to be said for pacing, but,
well,
you know.
I'm glad they're going the slow route. I mean, I am. It's actually kind of nice to get to know the characters and actually care about them. It's going to suck when, Neil dies, but, otherwise it's been good.
Yeah, it is kind of obvious he's gonna be. He is way too good to last on this.
I will say, though, even if she loved this house, like absolutely crazy in love with it, she's a dumbass.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the history or the ghosts, but what if her relationship with Neil fails? She's stranded all the way 5 hour walk out of town. Like, there's no way in heck she's going to be able to make it to her job that way.
Yeah. Actually, have they mentioned what her job even is?
She's unemployed right now. She used to be a packer at a warehouse. But either way, she's a long ways out of town. And she's putting a lot of trust in Neil not to, eventually break up with her for one reason or another. Or even, what if he dies? Even supposing that he doesn't break up with her and they're madly in love, that's still quite the risk. Anyway, that's just me.
Thanks for tuning in for 2 Cents with Rygone.
I say we could probably get all the way up to chapter 10, then we probably should call it there. So I can get a little bit more rest and then head into the office.
Sounds good. Thank you for reading so far.
Yeah, of course. It's been a fun read. And it's good practice for when I eventually do my full book reading on Saturday. Which, speaking of which, as a reminder to everyone, my tip goal was met. So we're going to be reading a full book called Oathbreaker on Saturday. It will also be combined with a game of Death of Legends. So feel free to tune in for that. I say to my 4 viewers.
Everybody, make sure you are checking out Rygone as well. He is the one that is reading this for us. So go over to his channel and check him out. And like he said, he's going to be doing that reading on Saturday.
Yep, so I'll also be here for the Digimon game. I get to practice more silver tonguing. Alright. Chapter 9 looks like it's a bit of a stretch for one, so it's long. So probably best we get on it. So one more sip. Sip, sip, sip. Alright. Chapter 9. Home. Left the main road and followed the incline into the country area. Another turn moved them out of the farming land and into a heavily wooded landscape. The road, which had been sealed until then, turned to dirt, and narrowed so much that Neil had to pull over to let vehicles driving in the opposite direction pass. Blackwood's driveway was a long stretch from any other signs of habitation. Mara couldn't help wondering what had prompted the original owner to choose that plot of land. She knew that, if she followed the dirt road further, it would eventually lead into the next town. But Blackwood House had been built nearly halfway between the 2 points of civilization, and didn't seem to have any close neighbors. Her driveway was a little over 4 kilometers long. The path was potholed and rough, but Neil's car managed it without trouble. Partway along, green and autumn yellow trees gave way to the spindly gray-trunked monsters that surrounded Mara's house. They turned around a final bend and found Blackwood looming ahead of them. Mara dug her fingernails into the car seats as an almost electric excitement rushed through her. The house looked even better than she remembered. It was hardly going to win the Cozy Home of the Year award, but it had personality, and it suited Mara perfectly. Neil pulled up in the patchy yard and squeezed her hand. Ready? Absolutely. Neil opened the boot while Mara followed the white stone path to the front door. She took the bronze key out of her pocket and fitted into the lock. Metal scraped, and when the door opened inwards, Mara felt pulled forward like a morsel of food being sucked into a monstrous fish's mouth. The entire room was exactly how she remembered it. The aged wood groaned around her as she turned on the spot. To her left, the long unfinished meal still sat on the table. Home is where the heart is, hung on the wall in the room to her right. Home. It was such a worn word. Mara had lived in houses before, but never a true home. Blackwood felt innately good, innately right, as if she'd found the one place on Earth she actually belonged. Footsteps behind her announced Neil's arrival. He carefully placed her portable wardrobe into the corner of the room, then crossed his arms as he surveyed the entryway. We should have hired someone to clean the place out a bit. I didn't legally own it until this morning, Mara said, shrugging. Besides, no point in wasting money on something I can do myself. To call the house a bargain was an absolute understatement. Mara's savings, which she had expected to almost entirely lose on an apartment, had covered Blackwood and left plenty to spare. Even after she paid for spare wood and tiles to repair the aging building, she'd have enough to last her at least 4 months, provided she didn't buy too many frivolities. 4 months was plenty of time to find a job, and she could spend her spare hours making Blackwood more comfortable. "All right, what's first, boss?" Neil asked. Mara twirled, then faced the stairwell. There's no electricity, so we better pick a bedroom before night sets in. Somewhere that will get moonlight through its window." "That's a good plan. We might find something on the second floor. It's less cluttered than downstairs and should hold its heat better. I'll grab some more stuff while you start exploring." "Meet you up there." It wasn't until she was halfway up the stairs that Mara questioned Neil's last phrase. "More stuff? Does he mean my box of trinkets? Or maybe he brought something for dinner. I wouldn't complain if he had. Tonight feels like it needs something more special than tinned tuna." On the second floor, the wide hallway branched to her left and to her right. Mara searched through it and found 3 empty rooms. The first 2 had shattered windows, but the third's glass was only cracked. Mara held her hand near the pane and felt a whistle of cold air. Maybe I can find some cardboard to cover it. All of the other bedrooms were furnished, and Mara didn't want to imagine the insects and cockroaches that might be living amongst the old wardrobes and under the decayed rugs. Her new room wasn't large, but it was at least clear and didn't have as many cobwebs lurking under the roof. Floral wallpaper, shabby, peeling, and discolored, coated the wall around the door. "Mara?" Neil called. In here." Backed into the room, 2 stacked boxes filling his arms. Mara recognized the cartons from the back of his car and frowned. "I thought you said that was some equipment from work." "Some of it is." He gave her an apologetic smile. "But I brought some extras just in case." "Just in case of what?" "In case my beloved girl didn't bring anything to sleep on, for instance." Neil dropped the boxes into the corner of the room. "Or anything to cook on?" He caught hold of Mara's wrist and tugged her close. "Or to heat herself when it gets cold at night?" Kisses peppered her cheeks, forehead, and nose. Mara, laughing, squirmed against him. "I swear, you're like the paranoid mother I never had. I don't need you fussing over me." "Really? Truly?" Neil quirked an eyebrow. "Were you just going to sleep on the floor?" Mara tried to worm herself free, but Neil's grip was too solid to escape. "Of course not. I was going to take one of the house's mattresses and flip it over." "Mara!" The abject horror in Neil's voice made her laugh uncontrollably. Neil seized on her moment of vulnerability, pulled her closer, pressing her to his chest and lifting her from the ground. His arms wrapped around her, seeming to engulf her. Mara, breathless and delighted, stopped fighting and allowed herself to be held. Before meeting Neil, she hated feeling vulnerable. To be weak was a source of shame and fear. It made her a target. It hurt. But Neil could make her feel entirely powerless in a way she loved. His arms never squeezed too hard, and his words were never harsh. To be vulnerable around him was to be safe. So, she draped her arms around his neck and let her body fall limp as he held her and kissed her hair. Mara, 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 he murmured. The adoration in his voice was almost too sweet to endure. I love you so damn much. Please be safe. Mara opened her eyes at the final words. There was a pang of fear in them, as though some deep, anxious emotion was inches from escaping its restraints. He seemed so cheerful today. Was it just a cover for this worry? She raised her hands to run them through his hair, and he pulled her close in response. Neil, it's okay. Everything's going to be fine. I know. Neil took a deep breath, kissed her hair a final time, then gently lowered her back to the floor. He looked a little sheepish, but still didn't remove his hands from her back. I know. You're a firecracker. Of course you'll be fine. Mara pulled him down to kiss her. His lips were hesitant, and she took control, pulling him in deeper. She was hungry for more. Her right hand gripped his shirt, and her left slipped underneath it to brush across his chest. He shivered in response, and she spread her fingers to press against the muscles. A clatter startled them apart. They turned, both breathing heavily, to see that one of Neil's boxes had toppled from its partner to spill its contents across the floor. Neil, still flushed, squeezed Mara's hand before crossing to the box. I can't have stacked him properly. We better unpack before it gets too late, I guess. Yeah. Mara's heart raced, partly from the thrill of the kiss, and partly from the startle. She followed Neil and knelt to open the first box. As she sorted through the contents, intrigue grew into incredulity. There were 2 sleeping bags. He'd clearly planned to stay with her that night, and pillows. Below those were rolled foam mats and a small gas heater. Then, a portable stove, a heavy ice box, toiletries, a compact first aid kit, and duct tape. Where'd you get all of these? Well, what I didn't already own, I bought or borrowed. Neil was returning the split contents to the box that had overturned. Mara caught sight of multiple torches and spare batteries, a radio, an umbrella, gloves, a roll of garbage bags, towels, and spare blankets. Do you intend to move in? Neil pecked her cheek as she leaned too close. No, but you do. I was gonna buy most of this stuff tomorrow, she groused. And now you can enjoy tonight. Hang on, the floor is disgusting. I'm gonna see if I can find a broom. Mara huffed as Neil left. Then she turned to explore the icebox. He'd packed meats, breads, fresh and dried fruit, and a bag of salad leaves. Why does he even bother? Mara muttered, shoving the leaves aside. She restacked the boxes to clear the floor as much as she could, then stood and wiped her hands on her jeans. Neil was right. The floor was beyond gross. She was going to have a fun time cleaning her way through Blackwood's rooms. It took Neil several minutes to return. When he did, he carried not only a broom and dustpan, but also a rucksack from his car. The old owners left plenty of cleaning supplies, though the mop would probably make the floor worse. But at least you could make use of the bucket and wash tubs. Mara took his rucksack and held it off the ground while Neil swept around her feet. That's kind of strange, isn't it? It's like they abandoned everything when they left. Not just the big furniture, but blankets, clothes, even their dinner on their table. What would make a family leave so quickly and never come back? He hesitated mid-sweep. Maybe you were right about the gas leak. I don't think so. Jenny was able to arrange for the gas and water to be reconnected while the paperwork was still going through. I had an inspector come down a couple of days ago, and he gave it the all-clear for leaks. Huh. Strange. Neil collected the grime into a tidy pile, and Mara knelt to brush the dust, dead flies, grime, and desiccated plaster into the dustpan. She then carried it to the adjacent room, which had a pane missing on its window, and emptied the dirt into the backyard. When she returned to the bedroom, he had unrolled both sleeping bags and was fastening strips of duct tape over the crack in the window. Mara approached him from behind and had wrapped her arms around his torso. He was so tall that she could barely reach his shoulder blades, but she kissed them and felt the reverberations in his chest as he murmured happily. There's still a few hours of sunlight left, Mara said. I thought we could spend it making a list of the major stuff that needs fixing. That way I can order some supplies tomorrow. Sounds good. Neil broke his strip of tape off the roll, and Mara released him reluctantly. He dropped the tape back into his box and dug out a notepad and 2 pens. Want to work together or separately? We'll get through it faster if we split up. Ripped a sheet from the pad and passed the rest to Mara. Let's divide it by floors then. Do you want the top or ground? I'd love to see more of downstairs while there's still light. Just note the major stuff like missing windows or rotten wood. We can worry about cosmetic issues later. On it. Neil headed into the hallway. Mara went the opposite direction and took the stairs down to the ground floor. She started in the dining room and jotted down the broken windows and where one section of the wall was decaying from water damage. Then she followed the entryway into the kitchen. Gripes, Mara murmured. The room was a mess. Rat and cockroach droppings littered the benches, and pots, plates, and baking pans lay askew. Judging by the dark stains in the dishes, the house's old owners had been saving the washing up for after dinner. She'd have to throw the dirty pots out, but the collection in the drawers looked to be high quality. She thought she could use them after giving them a good wash. The same went for many of the plates and the cutlery. Mara turned from the kitchen. Other than the mess, the room's structure seemed to be sound. She'd have to check if the gas stove still worked, but she could worry about that later. Past the kitchen was a laundry. An ancient washing machine and dryer sat against one wall. Mara opened the washing machine's lid, then dropped it back down in place as she gagged. Clothes had been left to mold and decay, and the smell was appalling. Looks like I'll be using the town's laundromat until I can afford a new machine. The laundry had a door leading into the backyard, but it was falling out of its frame. Mara examined it and thought it might only need new hinges and a fresh lock. She noted them in her book. She retraced her steps to the kitchen and took its other doorway into what she guessed was a recreation room. It had very little furniture, just a tiny boxy television with antennas sticking out of its hood, 2 crumbling lounges, a wooden table, 2 chairs, and a cupboard. Mara opened the cupboard door and gasped as a rat shot past her and scurried into the kitchen. She made a face as she watched its tail whisk out of sight. She turned back to examine the small collection of games inside the cupboard. She recognized Monopoly and Battleship, but the others weren't familiar. A creaking noise reached her, and Mara closed the wardrobe doors. She listened for the sound for a moment before identifying the steady, repetitive groans as belonging to the rocking chair in the living room. Oh, Neil must have come down. He can't have finished upstairs that quickly, surely. Mara followed the noise, moving through the recreation room's other door and into what she assumed was a library. Solid wooden shelves lined the walls, but they were devoid of books. Past the library was the sitting room. Mara paused in the doorway. The fireplace remained cold and empty, as though begging for a handful of wood and a spark. Home is where the heart is, hung on the wall beside her. The lounge chair seemed even more moth-eaten than the day before, as if that was possible, and the rocking chair rolled on its struts, back and forward, as its wood groaned. Mara was alone in the room. "Neil?" she called. "Everything okay?" Faint reply came from above her head. Mara stared at the gently rolling chair for a moment, then crossed to it, and placed her boot under the strut to stop its motion. The creaking was silenced. "Yeah, everything's fine." Backed away from the chair, and returned her pen to the paper, writing, "Breeze in the living room. Source unknown. Possibly the fireplace?" The room's windows were intact, except for a small crack running across one pane. Mara made a note of that, then returned to the foyer. There was some decay around the doorway, and several floorboards were rising. She wrote them down, then opened the front door to look outside. The sun was already setting. Mara was used to living in the heart of the town, where trees were a luxury. The dark trees around her house were thin, but grew high, and the boughs were smothering the dripping sun and welcoming shadows into Mara's home. Thank goodness Neil thought to bring torches. She climbed the stairs and found Neil at the end of the hallway, scribbling notes about a patch in the wall where the wood had been eaten away to leave fist-sized holes. He turned at the sound of Mara's footsteps and smiled. "All done downstairs?" "I've got the worst of it. We'll need to throw a bunch of stuff out, but there's still plenty of furniture that's good to use." Huh. "What a find, huh?" Warmth in Neil's voice was genuine, though hints of tightness still lingered around his mouth. She laced her hand through his as they walked back to their makeshift bedroom. "Ready for some dinner?" "Absolutely. I hope steaks are okay." Let me see here. "Ready for some dinner?" "Absolutely. I hope steaks are okay." "Never leave me." That's probably reversed. Oh well. That is the end of chapter 9.
Hooray!
And we've got just one more chapter left to go. Then I probably should call it chapter 10. Give me a second. I'm going to take a look at a couple of things. I've been called cute in my Discord.
Did somebody really tag you just for that?
No, they private messaged.
Oh.
Shella says, "I'd rather not sleep on an unfamiliar mattress, as even if you go to sleep on the mattress by yourself, you might not be sleeping alone." Well, she doesn't believe in ghosts, so I guess good for her. Is Mara the ghost? No, wouldn't that be the twist? She's an awfully solid ghost.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that's gonna be the twist.
Alright, let me take a quick drink, and then we will do chapter 10, which is only about 4 pages long, so it's going to be pretty short. Chapter 10. Nightfall. Mara scribbled a list of high-priority shopping while Neil set up his portable gas cooker. She would never admit it to his face, but she was becoming increasingly grateful for his planning. While she'd been prepared to slum it on the least damaged of the house's furniture for the first few nights, there was something beautifully comforting about having a clean sleeping bag and fresh pillow, not to mention torches and a heater. The air was cooling as night set in properly, and Mara was cocooned in one of Neil's blankets. I didn't get time to examine the roof. He dropped 2 steaks onto the sizzling cooker. It looks pretty bad from the outside, but thankfully, it's not impeding us right now. All the ceilings on this floor are fine, which is surprising. I would have expected some water damage at the very least, but it's good news for us. I mean, we can save the work on the roof until later, after we patch up the holes on the first 2 floors. How long's the whole job likely to take? Thought for a moment. Well, it'll just be you and me working on it, but the house's structure is basically solid. As long as we don't find any larger problems, the bulk of the major repairs should be done within a fortnight. And I'd say we can fix up the small stuff, the repainting and repairing cosmetic flaws, over the next 6 months. 6 months isn't too bad. Not at all. Of course, we'll need to get electricity run through here too. That's going to be a large job, and it's not something I can do. I'll ask around my contacts and see if any of them will give us a friend's discount. The smell of cooking meat permeated the room as Neil flipped the steaks, and Mara inhaled deeply. You're the best, Neil. I am, aren't I? His mischievous grin made Mara laugh, and he scooted backwards to sit next to her. I can't promise to be here every day, but Joel should be okay with me taking the afternoon off work for the next few weeks. I can swing by around 3 and stay into the evening. Mara rested her head against his shoulder. I'd really like that, but your mother still needs to see you occasionally too. He gave a small nod. His mother hadn't been coping well since losing her husband 8 months before, and Neil had moved back into his childhood home to look after her. He said Pam often floated about the house aimlessly, and skipped meals unless he was there to watch her. It worried Mara. She'd heard stories about couples dying within a year of each other, either from grief or because the change in their life was too great to reconcile, and dearly hoped Neil wouldn't have to lose his mother prematurely, too. It put him in a difficult situation, though. He was an only child, so the responsibility of caring for his mother fell to him alone. He is already juggling his work and home life, and Mara's new house would place additional strain on him. Even just staying with her for the night was a huge sacrifice. As far as Mara knew, he hadn't spent such a long stretch of time away from home since his father had passed. Neil moved back to the cooker to scoop the steaks off. An idea had been hovering around the back of Mara's mind during the 2 weeks between buying Blackwood and moving into it. She licked her lips before asking, How are things at home? He didn't look at her, but his voice was cheerful. Not too bad. The doctor's talking about weaning Mom off the sleeping pills. She still seems lost sometimes, but she hasn't had any more major lapses in memory. She knows what year it is, and things like that. Mara stared at her folded hands. Tell me if I'm being horribly rude here, but have you thought that your mother might do better in a new environment? Yeah, I have. Neil sighed as he settled next to her and handed her a plate. It was loaded with not just the steak, but also a potato salad, pre-cooked beans, and a handful of the leaves Mara had found in the icebox. I suggested it to her the other week, but it upset her too much to pursue it. She'd probably do better if she were somewhere that didn't constantly remind her of Dad. But at the same time, she's not ready to let him go. And I don't think a simple change of house would be enough. She'd need a new purpose in life, too. Right now, she doesn't have anything to fill her hours. Mara's mouth was dry. No, Blackwood's got plenty of room. Once there aren't any holes in the roof, you and your mother could stay here. I don't know. She might like to help with making it a proper home or something. Neil was silent. Very long time. Mara was frightened to look at him. She dreaded seeing signs of reluctance. When she glanced up, his shining eyes only reflected surprise and deep gratitude. You'd be okay with that? I think I would. She shrugged awkwardly. I mean, I'd ask that she didn't bring any of the religious stuff into the house. Or at least keep it in her room. I don't think I'd mind living with her if it's my home. That makes a difference, you know? Mara. Neil's voice was thick. He pressed a warm kiss to her forehead, then gave her a broad smile. Thank you. I don't know if she'll go for it. She probably wouldn't want to move within the next few months at least. But maybe that might work. Yeah? Yeah. Mara couldn't stifle her grin as she leaned against Neil's shoulder. A hot glow had started in her chest. Unlike an apartment or small house, Blackwood had plenty of room for the three of them, without any stepping on toes. Pam was a sweet, gentle woman, and Mara loved Neil more than anyone else in the world. She thought the three of them could be happy together. She picked the carefully arranged pile of salad leaves off her plate and dropped them onto Neil's. He groaned. That is the end of chapter 10.
He is never gonna get her to eat that.
Apparently not.
Just like I can't get Kurt to eat it.
Oh well, it's just how people are sometimes.
And yet he
Well-
wonders why he has stomach trouble.
Yeah, gotta get some of them vegetables in ya.
I mean, I don't like veggies, but, well, I'll eat them with the dish and stuff, but, I at least get my V8s every day.
Fair. I mean, so long as you're getting the vitamins some way.
Yeah.
The vitamins. Well, that'll be the last of the chapters I'll be reading today, but I hope you all enjoyed it. Yeah, it seems like a cute little book. I've been enjoying it so far. Gonna suck when Pam dies, and Neil, and probably the dog they're gonna get, but yes.
How dare you all, pal?
Anyway, over on my side of things, thank you all so much for coming on by the stream, and I hope you all enjoyed yourselves. I know it was a bit of a quiet and we were kind of all over the place, but I really hope you all enjoyed it. We had a great earlier stream, and I look forward to seeing y'all later. Hope you all have a good one, and yeah. Bye-bye.
Even though it's a little early, I think I might go ahead and call it here on my end as well. It's not that It's not that early before my appointment and such. So, thank you. Oh, why did that unpause? There we go. Do that, do that. There we go. But yeah, thank you everybody for joining us today for Factorio as well as this Art Marten stream. Check out our website, zgfgaming.com. We've got links for our Discord, Telegram, Mastodon, Blue Sky, Patreon, and more. There on the website as well as down in the description below through our link tree. Thank you to my patrons, tippers, and subscribers. It is your support that keeps this channel alive and going. I could not do this without your guys' help and support, so thank you. Consider becoming a patron over at patreon.com/zgfgaming. It is one of the best ways to support the channel, and we do have some art rewards coming in the very near future on there, so do consider helping us out on that. Otherwise, you can also help out by picking up merch over at zgfgaming.store, going and checking out Rygone, who was reading that book for us today, and subscribing to our YouTube. But for now, thank you all so much for joining, and I bid you the most fondest adieu.
Bye-bye.